said, let's break up, and then they just reformed with a different singer. So it's like they just fired. They didn't really break up.
Do you remember the first piece of music that you bought, like CD, tape?
Yes. The very first thing I ever bought was a 45 of Hold Me Now by the Thompson Twins.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's I really started off with the classic stuff.
Wait, that's first of all interesting because Thompson Twins, that was like early 80s, right?
Yeah, I think it was probably like 83. I would guess 83 probably.
When
so
did
I was
we,
probably 12.
we're the same, you were 12.
Yeah.
We're the same age, so when did we transition into CDs? Were we still buying?
I remember like being
40?
18 and for Christmas asking for CDs, but only ones that I felt like needed to be high fidelity. So I was like, I remember like George Winston or like Bobby McFerrin.
George Winston, like Winter.
Right,
And
right,
like
yeah,
the
the popular canon. And Bobby McFerrin, Don't Worry, Be Happy, where I was like, I need to hear the high fidelity, but not for like, and then I think for freshman year of college, it was off to the races. It was like everybody had CDs.
Right. But did you go from 45s? Because I remember a strong period of cassettes. Like when I would
Yeah, no, I had cassettes. I didn't buy a lot of music for a long time because and maybe that wasn't I think that might have been the first 45 I ever bought. It might not be the very first thing. I might have bought some tapes or gotten some tapes, but I think that like I had an older brother, you know, he was 5 years older than me, so he left home when I was 13. But before that, he would be in like the Columbia House, like 1 penny for 10.
Do it and then you cancel or something.
Right, or you don't cancel and then you pay like one album costs like $30.
Yes.
But so I listened to a lot of his music and I listened to the records in my parents' basement. And then I was like really into, for a while, doo-wop. And so I would go buy these old 45s.
How'd you get into doo-wop?
Through the magic of a cappella singing. And so I was eventually the president of my a cappella singing group, and we would do these songs. And I think now it's all like Glee and Pitch Perfect, like Rihanna songs or whatever. But like back then it was still like Under the Boardwalk and Book of Love and all these old songs. And so I would collect those. And so I bought a lot of 45s just because that's where you could find them without having to buy like a whole album. So I had a lot of 45s. And then I think my first favorite band, though, that I was really obsessed with, and it was so tragic, was Van Halen. And I got into them in 1984. And I was like, it was the first time it wasn't like my brother's band that he liked, that I listened to his album or whatever, or something I'd seen on like Friday night videos because I didn't have MTV, you know, so I'd watch Friday night videos and fall in love with those. But I was like, Van Halen is my thing because I saw them do like the video for Jump and Hot for Teacher, and I bought that tape at Musicland, and I bought like a little fake concert tee that had like a 3/4 jersey with like, you know, the thing. And then they kicked Dave out of the band. Yeah. And then I was like, I never got to see them in concert until they came back around like 10 years ago, you know? But I was so heartbroken because I was like, okay, I've got my thing. I'm a Van Halen guy. This is
my band.
And then they're like, Dave's done.
Did you not feel Sammy Hagar?
I mean, that's a ridiculous question. No, of course not. That's not even, I won't even dignify
You
that.
only dignify that question.
No,
Fair enough. I will not touch it. I feel embarrassed that I asked it.
No.
Did your brother have a big influence on you musically?
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I think my relationship to music with my brother was a lot like my relationship to comic books, which was what don't you already collect? What can I carve out? So like he was a comic book collector and he had the X-Men, so I had the Avengers. And you know, like that was, and I think music, like he was a little bit more in that kind of like Oingo Boingo and those kind of like slightly more new wavy kind of things. Yeah. And I feel like I had really bad basic kind of radio taste in music till I got to college, really. That I didn't really know anything beyond like what was sort of like popular because I was so like chasing popularity and I was like, I don't want to like anything that's going to make me weird. And my brother was like cooler and like less worried about appearances and fitting in, and I was like so obsessed with that. But I mean, I was in high school and like I was all about hair metal because everybody was supposed to be, and I was like listening to Poison and then when Guns N' Roses came out, like that was everything. And all that stuff. I mean, I had very basic taste in music until I went to college and I made friends with a music lover and I dated a music lover.
Oh, really?
You know, who kind of introduced me to like the Led Zeppelin I didn't know and the Grateful Dead and a lot of stuff that I had never listened to. And I remember being like a kid that had like, you know, when you go with your parents to like someone's house that had kids the same age, and there would be somebody that was like a little bit of like the bad boy, you know? Yeah. And I remember like the bad boy in a family friend group who had like Iron Maiden t-shirts. and it had like the Eddie, their mascot with the skeleton, who's like in the straight jacket. I was like, that's a little scary. That's a little too scary for me. And then I got to college and I was like, oh, Iron Maiden fucking rules, and like I got into Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath and Metallica in college, and now I can kind of like pretend like I was always like cool enough to like that stuff, but it wasn't until I was like 20. I was like so scared of like having any like dangerous musical taste when I was a kid. Because we had a big punk rock scene in Minneapolis. And by the way, like the Replacements, Husker Du, I was not cool. I was just like, I don't care for that at all.
Yeah.
And then I didn't really, people meet me now and they're like, oh, you grew up in Minneapolis in the 80s. You must have seen the Replacements a million times. I'm like, no, because I heard that like Paul Westerberg would show up 3 hours late and then like be too drunk. And people would be like, yeah, that's rock and roll. I'm like, I would just want my money back. I would just be annoyed.
100%.
Yeah.
What's the first piece of music that you remember in your life?
Yeah, I think that the first couple of things I remember is my parents had an old record player that was in it was like a piece of furniture. It was like a long console. And they had the 3 great Stevie Wonder albums from the early 70s, Talking Book, Intervisions, and Songs in the Key of Life. And so I remember wearing those out. And Talking Book, the record, the liner notes are in Braille, which I thought was so cool, as you open it up and you can like feel it. So I remember listening to that a lot. And also they had a copy of an album of covers by Dionne Warwick called Soulful that had like Hey Jude and a bunch of other songs that I didn't know until much later that she didn't write all those songs. I'm like, this woman is incredible,
The range.
the range of these songs that Stevie Wonder stuck with me forever, to the point that I don't think I even put him down as any of my favorites, because I went through it so long, and for decades I would tell you, who's your favorite artist? Stevie Wonder. And I would say those 3 albums and Music of My Mind and Fulfilling This First Finale and this run that he made. But I listened to those songs so much that I almost can't enjoy them anymore. It's like watching Spinal Tap, where like watching Spinal Tap after I was in college was like just me reciting the lines to Spinal Tap. I wasn't able to enjoy it.
Right.
And I think Stevie Wonder got to that point with me that like, I love him and he's so incredible and was important to me for so long that I almost can't listen to most of his most famous albums now, because I wore them out. And I think that like, I'm hoping that if I give it enough time that I'll be able to like return to it and it'll be like new again, I almost got to interview him too, because the first thing I ever did as a writer professionally was I wrote about music for a website. I was working there doing odd jobs, and they had some opportunities to review concerts and interview artists. And so I kind of weaseled my way into that through a combination of like cajoling and absolutely lying about my experience and knowledge about music. But I got to interview some cool people. I got to interview like Robert Cray, who's great. I did a lot of blues writing. But then I got to write the site's biography of Stevie Wonder and do little capsules of all of his albums, and then I tried to interview him, and so I had the means to like contact his people, but he just didn't have a project coming out, so he just wasn't interviewing me. But I was like taking my shot. That was like my one big thing. I was like, I want to say in my life that I got to interview Stevie Wonder, which would still be amazing, but
Why did you do blues?
because I was working for this this website that was a CD-ROM at the time. They were launching this big website.
It was what do you mean by it was a CD-ROM?
Well, it was sort of a predecessor to Spotify and Pandora. It was this music company called Launch. They created this first sort of like personalizable streaming radio service. And I was like a guy that went around and like helped people set up their internet. I was like an IT kind of temp, but I really wanted to be a writer, and I'd never been paid to write. And I was an aspiring writer and aspiring actor and all that. And the editor-in-chief of the site they hired was this guy who worked for Cream magazine, if you remember that,
yeah,
right?
Sure,
The one that would be like Iron Maiden be on the cover every other week. So the editor of this site, they were launching this thing where they were going to take like the 1,000 most important musical artists, and they were going to have a bio, and they were going to have little things about their albums. And I was like setting up his laptop or something, and I saw the master list of what had been assigned and what hadn't been assigned. So it was like country, here's these legitimate Rolling Stone level reporters with bylines who've been assigned these. Here's the indie rock, here's the hip hop, and then blues was empty. So I like waited a believable amount of time, and then I saw him in the hall, and I was like, hey, just crazy stab in the dark. I went to school in Chicago, huge blues fan. Absolute lie.
Look at you, opportunity. You're smart.
And he was like, well, as a matter of fact. And I'm like, really? And so he signed me all of them. And this was in the days of like, if you remember like the Virgin Megastore, where they'd have these listening stations where you
Yes,
could
yes.
just go and they'd be like, take a CD up and you can like listen, but it's meant to be for like a song. And they would kick me out of these places because I would go and be like, I need every album by, John Lee Hooker. I need every album by Bessie Smith. I need every album by Buddy Guy and Muddy Waters. And I went and I had a great education in the blues because I had to write about it. And then I started to get paid, a little bit of money, basically the price of a free ticket and a little change to go to like review blues concerts. And so that became my little niche.
Here in LA?
Yeah, like House of Blues or like the Long Beach Blues Festival. I did the Playboy Jazz Festival one year, and that was my first professional writing credit, really.
Wow. How long did you do that for?
Like maybe 3 years or something. I mean, it wasn't like a big money maker, but it was like, like I said, I could see a lot of shows and I could get free CDs and interview some cool people.
Okay, so let's talk about, because he's kind of littered in different places,
Yes.
which is a Waylon Jennings.
Yeah. I fell really, really hard for Waylon Jennings. And the way that I first got into him was through Grand Theft Auto. That I was playing, if you ever played Grand Theft Auto, so like, you're stealing cars as implied in the title.
Yeah.
And in the cars, you can, they have radios. And you can change the radio, and they have all these licensed songs. So there's like, there'll be like a hip hop station, an opera station, and there was a country music station on one of these things, and they were playing a song that I knew before, but Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys with Willie Nelson. But I was like, you know what? I like this. This is like, I'm responding to it. And I went out and I bought his greatest hits album, one of his greatest hits albums, and that was in every car I had. I think until the one I have now. It was like in the changer. Like I would just listen to it and listen to it and listen to it. But I only kind of knew those 20 songs or something. And then I worked on a sitcom with somebody that was like, I was starting to talk a lot about Waylon Jennings. He was like, oh, you need to listen to Honky Tonk Heroes. I'd never heard of it. And so I bought that, and that was kind of the thing that launched me into like this obsession with him. Listening to all these great albums, and he had this very, very long career and a very, really interesting life story and a really cool place in the sort of firmament of country music, to the point that I got really tired of. I felt kind of, you go through these periods as a sitcom writer where you get burned out of writing stories about like, Mom and Dad are coming for Thanksgiving. Oh no, So I was like, I want to do something different, and I thought, well, all I do for fun is listen to and read about Waylon Jennings. I should write a biopic of Waylon Jennings. So I talked to my agent, and he hooked me up with Jeremy Renner, who is somebody I thought could kind of like do it. And because he kind of looks like him and he's a musical guy, and he happened to have the same agent. So I pitched this and developed this Waylon Jennings biopic for Jeremy Renner that his company bought, and we developed for a long time, and it eventually didn't work out because we didn't have the music rights, and his son Shooter was developing a project at the same time. But it was something where I was like, one of the many times in my life as a writer where I was like, if you are obsessed with something, then like turn it into art, take this thing and say, if it speaks to you, then you'll be able to make something good out of it. I think that I'm such like a tame conservative person by nature that like I look at the posters in my wall at home, and I have a poster of Waylon Jennings, and I have a poster of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and a poster of Muhammad Ali, and all these people that are what I wish I could be like. And so I really respond to people, especially in an artistic medium, that say it's just about doing the thing that the purest version of the thing that's in your head, and that it may not work for a long time. It may not work till you meet that moment where like you just keep on doing your thing. You don't try to sort of like adapt to like what you think will sell or what you think will be popular. You can't really do that because it's a way of like making yourself mediocre. All you can do is just sort of hope that like you do your thing truthfully, and eventually like it'll meet the moment where it's received,
Yeah. So we're going to listen to Honky Tonk Heroes, the title track from the album Honky Tonk Heroes from 1973. So we'll be right back. That was great, man.
I mean, first of all, that voice. I mean, to me, for my money, even better than Johnny Cash. The thing about Waylon is that he was a guy that kind of didn't believe in going to sleep, that he sort of felt like sleep is just giving your life away. So like a lot of those guys in the late 60s, early 70s, very addicted to speed, just would be awake for 7 days in a row. And the combination of that voice and the fact that he looks and sounds always like so world weary, because he was, he had been kicked around in that system for so long and hadn't slept for 7 years that like that you could hear it in his voice.
So now we're gonna jump the other direction. I know pretty much nothing about Black Sabbath.
I don't think there's another band I can think of that both invented a genre and were never topped. I think the Black Sabbath invented heavy metal and are the greatest heavy metal band of all time still. That would be what I would say.
Really?
That if you listen to Black Sabbath now, it's still so dark and spooky and it fucking rocks so hard. And it's never, I don't think it's ever been topped in the history. I mean, like I have a lot of love for Iron Maiden and Metallica and Pantera and a lot of great metal, but it's not better. But I think they're, the music that they have, to me, it still is everything that heavy metal music needs to be. And Ozzy obviously is like a legendary figure. And I love them for their hits, and I love them for the way they fell apart. He got fired and he got replaced when he was just on such massive amounts of drugs. And it's a little bit like Van Halen. Like, I don't really acknowledge the post-Ozzy Black Sabbath, even though they did pretty well. Ozzy, one of my favorite things about Black Sabbath is when they were falling apart and Ozzy was unreliably messed up all the time on drugs. They went on tour and they chose for their opening act a band that nobody knew very much about at the time, and they were really almost unable to, Ozzy was almost unable to perform, and they had the misfortune of this tour in the mid-'70s of picking Kiss, who nobody knew to open for them. So every night they would go out and people would be like, bring back Kiss. So then the last tour that Ozzy went on, he was like, we're not making that mistake anymore. We're not doing that. I want somebody to open for us that doesn't even have a record album yet out. So they picked Van Halen. So the last two
Really?
Black Sabbath tours with Ozzy before he cleaned up his act and came back were with Kiss and Van Halen, completely trumping them, But
Was all of this kind of a revelation to you in kind of like your 30s? I mean,
I think Black Sabbath was a early college thing. I had a good friend who was a excellent drummer, and so he listened to a lot of metal, and that's how I got into Metallica, Black Sabbath, and that stuff, and kind of got over my 10-year-old John fear of like metal as being scary,
John
it was
can
cool.
be a bad boy.
Yeah, exactly. I became the bad boy, the very cautious bad boy.
Well, for a Black Sabbath newbie like
Yeah.
myself, a budding fan, what would be something that we could listen to that would give me, that you'd be like an easy entry?
I don't know if this is a good intro song to Black Sabbath, but it's a song that I love. Children of the Grave.
Children of the Grave.
Children of the Grave.
I'm going to say it like this. We're going to listen to Black Sabbath. Love it. That's not what I think about heavy metal. Like it's cleaner than when I think of heavy metal.
There's a lot of classical music, like a lot of guys, when you look in like the 80s, and a lot of these guys who are like guitar players in that metal vein, they are super into like almost like Bach. There's like that really the intricacy and that sort of like gothic darkness is a big part of metal. I mean, that sort of, it's like perverting it because it's about like dead children,
Right.
And then you marry it with that gallop, which everybody thinks of as like that classic heavy metal dun 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 dun, like that's such a staple.
But it's
melodic.
That song anyway is melodic.
Yeah.
I have a tough time with too much cacophony.
Yeah.
And it's
pretty clean.
Cleaner.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just that song.
And it's
would you
also
say?
part of like, it's from, the late 60s and early 70s.
Right,
so it's a
right.
little bit before things got a little bit too Baroque and a little bit too intricate. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
I dig
Good
it.
stuff.
So now we're going to shift gears to from the year of my birth, 1971, and that's Donny Hathaway.
Oh, boy.
And it's one of your favorite songs, a song for you. And
It might be my favorite song. It's a cover.
So tell me about that song.
Donny Hathaway's Song for You is a cover of a Leon Russell song. I love Leon Russell also, but Donny Hathaway is one of, like, I find his voice to be maybe the greatest voice of all soul singers. I mean, there's, Sam Cooke and Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, but I think Donny Hathaway's voice is the best of all of them. And he was a guy that felt like he had a bad voice. He was really self-conscious about it and was a really troubled guy. And he's also, and maybe this is part of why I love him or why that song moves me the way that it does, is that one of a shockingly long list of great iconic soul singers who met a tragic end. There are so many people that have had terrible accidents or things that killed them. Marvin Gaye, famously killed by his father. Curtis Mayfield, paralyzed. Teddy Pendergrass.
Is that a requirement for you that they...
No, I just think it's interesting that these people that sang so deeply about soul music, about the maybe the most deeply emotional kind of music, and so many of them happen to have these tragic lives. There's something really strange about that. But Donny Hathaway, he was schizophrenic, and ended up killing himself. But he left behind this legacy of this pretty small group of people, songs. A lot of them he did with Roberta Flack. They were sort of a team, not romantically, but they, You've Got a Friend and all these great songs together. It's never a song like I always listen to music on a massive playlist I have on Spotify that's like John's favorites, and it's got like 5,800 songs on it. I listen to it on shuffle. That's kind of all I listen to for the most part.
Keep adding to it
Anything I like, it just goes in the favorites, and it's every genre of music, and and sometimes you're like, I don't feel like listening to this particular song. Skip. I'll never skip that song. I'll never not listen to that song.
Let's just jump right into it. This is a song for you by Donny Hathaway, or covered by Donny Hathaway, from 1971. We're going to check it out right now. I get chills. It's so like
I get that way every time with that song, and I don't know a lot of songs that are like that I can still be emotionally affected by a song I know so well.
Yeah,
and
it pulls you right in.
It does, yeah. And you can hear when someone is troubled and in pain, and it comes out through the music like that, and he certainly had that in him, and that's a tragedy, but to have it preserved in music like that is special.
And you said he played the piano on that? He played the piano?
Yep.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's an incredible song. Thank you for that in my life.
I love that when you find a new song, because it does feel like you got a little present.
Over and over, every time I do this, it's been incredible. Okay, so now this is interesting to me because I've had this experience with Blondie, and I've had this experience with Joe Jackson.
Okay.
And that's an album that you put, that's one of your favorite albums, Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley by Robert Palmer.
Right.
So it wasn't until I started collecting records that Joe Jackson, I always thought about Stabbing Out.
Right.
Did not like that song at all. In fact, really didn't like it. Blondie. What was the
One Way or Another, Call Me.
One Way or Another, Call Me. Right. I knew it, and I was like, whatever. But with records, I was like, oh, look, it's the first. Boy, they go back into the 70s, and I got it. And with Blondie, it was E to the Beat.
Yeah.
And with Joe Jackson, it was Look Sharp.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what? Who's this?
Yeah.
And so I listened to just a little bit of this Robert Palmer album.
The best example of that ever. Yeah.
1974, this album is from. And I thought of him, Addicted to Love, Simply Irresistible. Did not like those songs at all.
No, of course.
So tell me about this album, and it's a revelation to me because I didn't think.
It's Robert Palmer's first album, and I have a real sort of nerdy fascination with people that did exactly what you're talking about. That had a sound that they tried that was wonderful, and then found success doing something shitty, And I think that like Robert Palmer is the best example of that. But like every song on this album is so fun and so good, and then he completely abandoned the sound.
Is there a song on there that that we could?
I think just the opening three, the medley, is the best. The first three songs.
Okay, so we're going to listen to that medley, which is Sailing Shoes, Hey Julia, and then Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley. Yep. It's 1974, Robert Palmer, and now we're gonna give it a try right now. Great, just funky and groovy.
That first song, Sailing Shoes, is a cover of a Little Feat song. They did Dixie Chicken and Fat Man in the Bathtub, and it's like music you can see like a guy in jeans and no shirt like dancing to at a festival, and not what you think of as Robert Palmer with the slick back hair and the suit.
Let's go to 1998.
Ooh,
Outkast. You have it as one of your favorite albums. Aquemini. So tell me about how that came to you. When it came to, did it come to you at that time?
I grew up when like we both did. Like I remember Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang, and I remember Beastie Boys, License to Ill, and LL Cool J, and people like that that sort of broke through, Run DMC with Walk This Way and all that. So I knew a little hip hop, and then when I was in college, everybody was into Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul, and so I listened to some of that, but I wouldn't describe myself as having any knowledge. And then I graduated in '93, and I kind of missed out. I think, like a lot of people, when I first got out of college was probably when I listened to the least amount of music, because I was like trying to get a job and I moved to a different city. And,
that's interesting, actually. I feel like the same thing.
Yeah, and I missed out. 1993, particularly the year that I graduated from college, is like the seminal year in hip hop. There's like Biggie had a huge album, Wu-Tang's first album. I think Doggy Style is that year by Snoop. And Goody Mob and Outkast's first album came out that year. So all that stuff is happening in '93, and I kind of don't know anything about it. Right. I know probably like California Love, and I know like Snoop Dogg's big hits or Gin and Juice or whatever, but I didn't have a real deep, and I became a person that and I'm a little out of touch now, but I became a person that got really into hip hop, and Aquemini was sort of the first album that kind of was, when it came out, at the time it came out, that I discovered it and fell in love with it and was like blown away by it. But I just loved that album so much, and they really put Southern rap on the map. Some of my favorite verses ever in hip hop are on that album. You know, there's a Andre 3000 verse in the song Aquemini that I think is like still one of the best verses ever. But it's just it's like fun and it's interesting, and they're like a weird combo. There aren't a lot of like, there's some, but I would say it's a pretty short list of like iconic rap duos, you know, that were really like complementary to each other. And those guys were just kind of the perfect foil for each other.
What's a good song that we could listen to?
Let's listen to Aquemini.
So we're going to listen to Aquemini, the title track from the album Aquemini, 1998 by Outkast. Here we go. Tell them what you said.
I have a lot of love for songs from the 90s, hip hop songs that talk about beepers as like a status symbol, you know? Pay your fucking beeper bill, bitch.
Beepers, I remember beeper in New York City.
There was a minute where that was a big thing.
Yeah,
you're like, I'm like a doctor.
Yeah.
Whoops, I've got a pager.
Excuse me.
911.
Yeah, I've got an under 5 audition. So let's talk about one of your favorite songs, 13. It's from 1972 by Big Star. So how did that come into your life?
Big Star is one of those things kind of hipsters like to go like, oh, actually Big Star is my favorite band. It's like, no, they're not. They have like 4 great songs and they're incredible, but like they're not
your favorite band.
They're not your favorite band. You know, like there's an album called Forever Changes by the band Love, which they have that song Alone Again, which is like a iconic song, but people are like, that's my favorite album of all time. I'm like, you're absolutely lying. It's like you know 2 songs from it. And Big Star is kind of one of those. I'm almost embarrassed how much I love 13 because I don't want to be lumped into people that act like they've always been a Big Star fan. But it's great song.
The heart loves what the heart loves.
The heart loves what the heart loves. And 13 to me is one of the, especially because it's talking about being 13, which is so specific. And the first time that you sort of both are sort of falling in love with somebody and feeling like the world of adults don't understand you. And it's just kind of nails that sweet feeling of being that age and falling in love and being mildly rebellious for the first time, but not being like super rebellious because it's kind of innocent. And I think that just for a song that wanted to accomplish that, it really got the assignment. You know, it really makes you feel like a kid, but also a little bit like, your dad doesn't even understand rock and roll. It's so cool. But it's just a beautiful song.
Let's listen to it. Okay, so we're going to listen to the song 13 by the group Big Star from 1972. All right, here we go. And John likes it because he likes it, not because he's trying to be cool. That's a lovely song.
So pure.
Before he starts singing anything, it has the sweetness of a 13-year-old.
It kind of reminds me of I Can Tell That We're Going to Be Friends, that song by the White Stripes. It's almost like nursery rhyme level.
Yeah,
hook,
it feels,
you know?
yeah.
And Alex Chilton's voice is so great. But I also love that it's like, remember when we were talking about how cool Painted Black is by the Rolling Stones? Tell your dad that, how rock and roll is here forever. Like it's got that kind of adorable, like mild rebellion of a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Be like, I'm not going to tell your dad what we said about Painted Black. I want you to tell him what we said, how it's cool, you know? Like, I love that.
So within it, it's like this great storytelling.
I'm a sucker for like storytelling songs. I think that like, you know, I'm a big country music fan and I have a real soft spot for story songs. Because I think that there aren't a lot of things. Country does it better than anybody. Country embraces that. Like, I'm going to tell you a story like He Stopped Loving Her Today, which is, you know, such a weepy song about like a guy who carried a torch for a woman all his life. And the day he stopped loving her was the day he died. And it's a reveal in the song. And you're like, oh my God, he's been dead. And, you know, but like pop music doesn't do that as often. It doesn't tell those stories that are like really going for the emotion and the tears, but that's got a little flavor of it that I like a lot.
One thing we have learned about John Quaintance from this episode is that if you want a guy to do a deep dive,
yes, I'm your man.
He is your man.
Yeah.
I mean, impressive deep dives. The whole blues reporter is very impressive.
It's a great gift of the streaming era, of the internet era.
Yeah.
You don't have to go and like be like, oh, I think I'll go spend $15
Yeah.
on this CD I've never heard of, or this tape I've never heard of, or whatever. You can just go on Spotify or YouTube or any of those things, and like I can go and link hop forever, and you always can find, you know, some new rabbit hole to go down, and I hope that always stays the same. You know?
Yeah. Well, very cool, man. Awesome talking
Yeah,
with
great
you.
to be here. Thank you for having me.
It was great.